So in today's video, I'm going to show you how to build a simple image progress chart like this that automatically progresses as you hit checkboxes or as a number is updated, or even a habit tracker where the number of checkboxes doesn't match the number of images you have, and so you need to be able to progress on a particular basis. So here are the images we're using. And so what I did was I just used ChatGPT and asked it to generate 5 images in different stages of growth. And it created one image. And so what I did was I put that in Canva, remove the background, and then basically just cut it into 5 images. Now, one thing to note is I kept them all the same height. And that way, so this one doesn't try to fill more of the cell. And then basically what I did, came in here, insert image in cell, and then I uploaded each image into each of these cells. So you can do this whether you're doing 3, 4, 5, or more images. All right, so let's look at how to build this. And so I'm going to start with a formula right here. So let's go ahead and get rid of these real quick. And then let's look at what's going on here. So I have something extra showing up here. So we can remove that just for the building's sake right now. And this is basically the formula that we're using. So we're having an error because we have nothing selected. So let me select one real quick there. And so what we have here is we have an index formula that refers to our images. So our images are A1 to E right there. And then in index, what it does is we can feed it a number for the row we want to return, which is just going to be row 1. Then we can return a number for the column. And so this is how we're picking which image we want. And so in this case, we have one checkbox for each image. And so this makes it very easy. So basically what we want to do is count how many are true and return that as a number. So here it's 1. And then if we check another one, that will turn to 2. And that's why it's returning the second image and so forth. And so this would be 3 and returning the third image. So that's how that works. Now, the only goofy thing here is if we remove all of these, if we have 0, basically what it does is it returns the entire row of images. So that's why I added this little if statement here. And so let's copy this. And then we're going to say if this is 0, and I'm just doing 2 commas there, and that's just going to leave it blank. And then I can drag this across. Now, one thing you could do is what if you wanted, maybe you want to get rid of this end phase here, or we'll ignore it for now. So I'll just remove those checkboxes. What if we want 0 to be our first one, and then we can go up from there? So in that case, we don't need this, and we go like this, index, and then we do +1 on our COUNTIF. And so now if I drag this across, you can see that if we have none checked, we have the baby seed, and then each one we do grows from there. And that's another option as well if you want something to show up even if nothing is checked. All right, so let's look at our next scenario, which is based on a percentage. And so here, if we go down to 5, for example, that's 20%. So I have to explain just a tiny bit of math here. So basically this is number of complete and then the goal. And so the percentage is just the complete divided by the goal. And that's what percentage is complete. So what we're going to do in this formula is, because we have 5 images, we're going to take that percent and times it by 5. And then we're going to round it because we may not evenly break into 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so in this one, we're rounding the percentage times 5. And so what this will do is it's going to come up with anywhere between 1 and 5. And so if we go down to 2, for example, you can see 8%. And so 8% would round down to 0, because basically the round is trying to round to the nearest 20%. And so 8% is closer to 0 than it is to 20. And so that's the logic that's happening here. And so if we go to, let's see, 3 is 12%, and that's now closer to 20 than it is to 0. And so that's how this calculation works. And again, we have that if that round is 0, we're going to do nothing. Otherwise, we have the same index formula. And then here for our column, we have that round C7, which is at 12% times 5. So we could get rid of this percentage here And so then here we would do C5 divided by C6, wrap that in parentheses to make sure that happens before we times by 5. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. Enter, and now we do not need this calculation. It's happening right in that cell. So whether you have a percentage, you can incorporate that into the formula, or you can take a complete and goal, or basically any time that you can come up with that percentage and then times it by the number of images you have and wrap that in a round. All right, so finally, let's look at habit tracker. So here we have a similar scenario, but here we again do not have the percentage. So we could add the percentage, and that would just look something like this. And we do count if, where this is true, divided by counta, and just select those same cells. And that would give us a percentage. And then we could take that percentage, just like we did in this one, and times it by 5, or however many images we have, to come up with our number. So that's an option if you want the percentage to show up here. Otherwise, what we're going to do is basically create our percentage inside the cell. And so let me break this down. Let me get rid of this real quick. And so here is our base formula. So again, our index, and it takes our base image range. And so this is what we're doing right here. So I'm just going to break this out real quick. And let's just put equals in that cell. So here's what we're coming up with right now is 4. So if we look at this, we're taking that countif where it's true. So that should look familiar to what we just did with our percentage. And then counta, and then times 5. So this is a very similar calculation to what we're using here. It just looks a little bit more convoluted because we have more going on. And so now if we look at this, so in this case, we have 9. So 9 doesn't super fit into 5 very well. And so I just want to use it as an example. And so let's check through these and see what we come up with. So if we have 0 checked, we have 0. Check 1, comes up with 1. 1 again, 2, 2 again, 3, 3 again, 4, 4 again, and 5. So that's the distribution there of those check marks. And so this would vary based on how many you have. So if you had, an even number, so for example, we have 5 here. So if you had 10, 15, 20, something like that, a multiple of 5, then this would break evenly. But otherwise, it'll just break however it can based on the percentage. And so then basically we come up with our baseline here, and then we're good to go. All right, so that is it for today's video. Make sure to check out the other videos on our channel for more tutorials on both Google Sheets and AppScript. And as always, have a great day.